Now, as if we needed more proof of how much we need a royal commission into Australia's handling of the COVID pandemic to hear from the pandemic premiers who inflicted so much misery and pain. Now, many of them have now left politics, so you'd think they would have had time to reflect on the decisions and what could and should have been done better. But it seems that reflection has been lost on former Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk. She sat down for what has been described as a candid interview about the pandemic. But it was about as candid as this.
People living in New South Wales, they have New South Wales hospitals. In Queensland, we have Queensland hospitals for our people.
Oh, just never gets old, does it? Who could forget that? Now, when asked in the interview on the 7 Network last night about whether she regrets her decisions to keep dying loved ones apart because of the harsh Queensland border restrictions, well, she offered up this.
I still stand by what we did to keep Queenslanders safe, and the end result was we only had tragically 7 deaths during that whole period of that 2 years before we opened up our borders. So I think the results show that it did work.
It did work, she said. She stands by it. She stands by loved ones being locked out by border restrictions and having to say goodbye on FaceTime. It doesn't matter to her. The stress of being denied exemptions, having to apply for an exemption in the first place, I mean, it was utter madness and, well, she stands by it. And she was then asked in that interview what lessons Australia learned from the pandemic.
We found out that we needed to manufacture more here. We needed to have the ability to produce vaccines here. When we didn't have PPE, we didn't have the masks and everything else that was needed. So we actually have domestic manufacturing.
Vaccines and PPE. Vaccines and PPE. That we needed more. That is what she learned from years of hell. Never mind, the Queensland Supreme Court found earlier this year that vaccine mandates for police and ambulance workers were unlawful under the Human Rights Act. So you would really think that the former Queensland Premier would have said, well, actually, upon reflection, maybe we should not have been so quick to impose vaccine mandates and considered human rights. And then in one last insult...
Not everything was right, not everything was perfect, but we got through it.
Yeah, well, Anastasia Palaszczuk did get through it on a $420,000 salary and now working a cushy job with the Smart Energy Council. Meanwhile, other people who lost their jobs because they refused her vaccine mandate have had their lives destroyed, their finances turned upside down and their job prospects ruined. It is astonishing that years later there is zero sympathy from this robotic pandemic premier. It's a further insult to those who lost loved ones, whose businesses went broke, whose children were robbed of key educational years. The list goes on. And for the former Queensland Premier to say, I don't know, I can't really think of anything that we could have done better other than vaccines and PPE is a double blow. And it's an even a bigger blow that the Albanese government's COVID cop-out inquiry won't examine decisions by the states, because former COVID premiers like Palaszczuk and Dan Andrews and the chief health officers would get minced in front of a royal commission. I mean, wouldn't you love to see this scrutinised?
My advice to you is to duck and just do not touch that ball.
And that's what they are scared of. The truth was already confirmed by former Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt, who was minister during the pandemic. He has made a scathing submission to Labor's inquiry, hitting out at states and territories over unilateral health decisions taken during the pandemic that were, would you believe, not backed by medical advice. No wonder Labor don't want a royal commission. It's clearer than ever why we need one. Otherwise, nothing will change. History will repeat itself, and all we will care about is more vaccines and PPE.